I'm almost... This bolt here is a nightmare. Now, I'm thinking this whole time as I'm removing these bolts, I'm thinking what could possibly be the cause of this? Now these engines, they have the rocker arms are sitting on this, I'm not sure what the correct term is, it's basically the bar that holds all of the rocker arms, you know, one for exhaust and one for intake, and then of course you got a push rods. You know, what I'm thinking, maybe the bolts got loose because that cylinder is not closing it's not opening the exhaust at all. Maybe just kind of, it's angled, it pushed up, the springs are kind of put under tension and it pushed it all the way up. Maybe those bolts are loose, or maybe even broken, who knows. And so I'm really excited to get this cover off. So it's a pisser to get that crap out. But anyhow, it's interesting. Anyhow, okay. Alright, here's a moment of truth. To remove that last bolt, I used a flexible extension 1/4 inch, and I end up moving the harness back a little bit, and I used this extension. I was able to get it behind the harness, between the harness and the firewall, and get to that bolt. I've lost one somewhere, I have to find it, but you want to take them out of the engine cover, because once you start moving this around, they're going to start popping out, and then you're going to keep losing them. Okay. I'll put a drill to the side. Should come out now. Still pretty stuck on this. This harness is really giving me a hard time. So I'm going to peek inside. All of the bolts are on it. Okay, that's crazy. The engine looks pretty good. There's no sludge on it, and I mean the cylinder head. Now what's going on here? Oh God. Wow. Damn. Huh. What the heck? It's an intake push rod on the intake valve on cylinder number 8 is completely bent. Now, that's interesting. Oh, Lord, hell, wow. Oh, this sucks. Okay, wow. Wow. That is pretty wild. I do have an answer why the you know, we have a waveform that we have on number 8. It is what happened. The push rod had broken completely. I mean, it's bent, and then it got wedged into a this railing here, the rail that holds the exhaust rocker arms, and it completely sheared off. Now, you know, so this one, that's what I was, you know, I said, is it possible the bolt is loose and it's not, you know, lifting up the exhaust? It's not pushing the exhaust rocker arm. And yeah, I mean, sure enough, I mean, this thing is, this sucks. And this wedged now right on top of the intake valve. Damn. Well, the question is, now this is of course not the cause, this is a effect of the bad intake push rod, or most likely what happened that the hydraulic lifter had collapsed, and the push rod was no longer tight, and it just pushed the you know, got out of place and then broke the rail here. Well, the question is now why. Well, I guess the reason why other exhaust valves are messed up because this guy's probably loose or something. I guess we can maybe crank the engine over and see what happens, but alright, so here we go. Kind of same thing on the this, oh, it got wedged. Yeah, it's because this, oh, the spacer is missing here. Okay, it's crazy. So the spacer is gone, and then this rocker arm is pushed to the side on the cylinder number 6, and it's not pushing the exhaust valve all the way down. And this one is okay. I mean, I'm still kind of puzzled, you know, how that is crazy. I'm not sure where this spacer is. It should be there somewhere. There it is. Okay. Okay. And it's broken too. Yeah. Just one piece. I have to fish around and see if I can get a magnet in the. Huh. Well, that's pretty wild. I did not expect to see this at all. Whew. Wow. Well, the waveform doesn't lie, that's for sure. That is bizarre. But I'm still a little puzzled. How could we have any kind of pressure on I don't even know, I don't remember what was pressure. I mean, it was pretty low, but you would think it was just pretty much a flat line because nothing is coming in anyway, because we can't, the push rod can't push the rocker arm on the intake valve either to suck anything into this cylinder. And of course the exhaust, it's not opening at all. I mean, that is really crazy. Now the question is, how, I mean, honestly, this is not too bad. Well, I guess it is, because I still have to replace golly, this sucks. All the question is what is the condition of that hydraulic lifter? I mean, that's, that is a definite cause of all the problems. That was the first issue, and then everything else is kind of like a chain reaction. Wow. as I'm getting more and more waveforms, I mean, it was like, what the heck is going on here? I was like, wow. And this is literally was running on 4 cylinders. I mean, I could, you know, sometimes I could hear like a popping sound. You can tell something is, you know, hitting something, but I didn't expect to see this at all. The question is, the threads are okay here. If the threads are damaged, which most likely they are, I'm not sure that it might just get loose on this bolt here, but if the threads are damaged inside this, you know, cylinder head, then it's pretty much game over. Wow. Or now we could see that, you know, the number 8 valve, the intake valve, it's not opening at all. Now, what I found out actually, I did remove the rail, and all these bolts are pretty loose actually. I'm not sure it's a vibration or what it was, but they were really loose. Like 5 foot-pounds at the most, 5 to 6 foot-pounds. I'm not sure what the specs are, but I think they're really loose. So what I did now, I have moved a push rod from cylinder number 2 down to cylinder number 8, and let's see, you know, if it's gonna open, if it's gonna fully open. I'm gonna crank the engine, and we'll see what happens. Whoa, what a mess. The problem is, it's a push button engine. You can't really stop until, you know, stop on its own, so that's okay. I'll clean that up. Alright. Doing a leak down test. Cylinder number 2 is good. Let's go to 4. Number 4, 40%. I'm not really happy with that at all. Seems like it's intake valve. Number 6 looks good. Number 8 is a 30. Not the best, but it is what it is. So anyhow, this video is kind of all over the place. Now, doing the leak down test, we have one cylinder that has a 40% leakage. I'm not sure what to do with that, but I think what my plan is, I just kind of look some things on eBay, what can I find, and I can actually find a complete intake and exhaust rocker arms, you know, with the railing and everything for like $60. So I mean, I can, you know, get that and get one push rod, and maybe even replace all of the push rods, and see what happened. I mean, I'm not sure why that push rod came out on a cylinder number 8 on the intake side. I don't know. I mean, after I swapped the push rod from number 2 to number 8, it seems like it was opening and closing just fine. So I don't see that we have a problem with a you know, hydraulic lifters. I'm not sure. Until I get everything back together, I'm not sure. But at least, you know, I do have some evidence that it could be fine. This is a very common problem for those lifters to collapse, but it doesn't seem to be the case here. I don't know. So I'll talk to the owner. I think he will agree to you know, get the new, I mean, I'm just going to put used, you know, rocker arms and all that, get the push rod, and see what happens. I mean, it's you know, it's not much to lose at this point. So now, I did notice that all the bolts on the intake side you know, they hold the rocker arms are pretty loose. I mean, they were not tight at all. So it might be just the fact that, you know, they were starting to kind of getting looser, and that the rocker arm fell off. Unfortunately, it did hit the, you know, rail on the exhaust, on the intake, on the exhaust side, and broke it. So, but you know, it is what it is. So anyhow, we'll find out. We'll find out in a week or so, I hope, and you know, we'll go from there. Okay, this is like 5-6 days later. I've talked to the owner, and we came to a conclusion to get another rocker arms. So I ordered them off of eBay. I got the used kit, intake and exhaust. Here's the intake, and I got exhaust here. The intake is actually marked with I, so you don't get mixed up. So in pretty decent condition. They're like 40 bucks, and so you could see that you know, what I've learned from this case study is that pressure transducer never lies. You know, even though you don't expect to see some kind of waveform, it is accurate. You know, you just need to figure out what's going on in it. And particularly in cylinder number 8, where we had those just the humps, and I was thinking maybe that, you know, exhaust valve is not opening. Actually, after I looked at it again, if the exhaust valve is not opening, if you just suck stuff in but you never pushed it out, that the exhaust, we should actually see exhaust part of the waveform where the piston goes up to push the we should actually see the exhaust part of the waveform, which will be a little bit lower in the pressure, in the compression. So the peak compression would be here, and our exhaust pressure will be here, kind of like what we see on the first waveform. But we could see there was a part of the valve that was opening. It will be just basically two peaks. One will be higher, one will be lower. And also we could see on the first look sensor that, you know, we really could not decipher, you know, what's going on. Basically, we had cylinder number 2 as a sink, and there were just obviously mechanical issue. Seems like we had like 3 humps, the most of 4. I'm not sure. You know, all they were actually coming from the bank 1, because the bank 2 was shut anyway. The what else? After I swapped the push rod from cylinder number 2 to cylinder number 8, we could see that, you know, the valve was opening and closing, the intake valve was working. Now, I am worried, of course, that, you know, I've seen those hydraulic lifters doing okay during the cranking, but once they start, they would collapse. And of course, the most common issue in these engines were, again, this is my first one. I have never seen this engine before in my life. This is my very first, but I did some homework, and I've seen that, you know, the follower on the hydraulic lifter would collapse, and it would seize, and then it would rub over the cam of the crankshaft and camshaft, and it would pretty much destroy the camshaft. I'm not sure, you know, what the deal is here, but I have to put everything back together and, you know, see what happens. Now, why did the exhaust shaft broke, you know, the shaft that holds the rocker arms? I don't know. At first I was thinking maybe that, you know, the push rod maybe hit it. I'm not sure. It seemed to be that it would take more force to snap that shaft in half. So this is what was left of it. So I'm not sure, you know, how did it happen, but it did. So what's the damage on exhaust side of this engine, you know, on this head? I really don't know until I put everything back together. And something else, of course, I worry that this is not the cause of the problem. This is the effect of something else, and most likely something with the lifter. It's a problem. The owner, actually, after I talked to him again, he said he owned this car for 6 months, and ever since he bought it, it has a slight ticking noise that got louder and louder over time. And we never really thought about, you know, really worried about it. The engine was running fine. It had plenty of
plenty of power. It's a big V8 engine. So anyhow, I'm gonna put all this together. Already got spark plugs back in, and first what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna put the rocker arms back in, and then we're gonna crank the engine over. We're gonna record, intake and exhaust side to see if the valves are opening, and then I'm gonna briefly start the car. Hopefully it's gonna run over those 4 cylinders, which was running anyway, and record, how these valves are working or not. Now, when I moved my push rod from number 2 to number 8, we could see a whole bunch of fluid came out of that cylinder, number 8. It was actually fuel. I was kind of confused at the first when I looked at the image, but basically what happened as car was running, the fuel, the injector was spraying the fuel over the intake valve, but the valve was never opening, so basically it would just accumulate all that fuel on top of the valve. Once it overflows, it just goes into the intake and get reburned in other cylinders. So once I got that push rod in, and when the valve opened, it sucked all that fuel, and luckily I had my spark plug out, because I could probably, even hydrolock the engine, because I wasn't aware there was so much fuel actually sitting on top of the intake valve. And well, that's it. I'm going to put everything back together, and we'll see what happens. Everything's back together. Looking at the service manual, the rocker arm shaft assembly is supposed to be torqued down to 16 foot-pounds, and I'm not sure if I mentioned that when I was removing these rocker arms assembly, I used the torque crane just to kind of see how tight they were. They were like a 5 to 6 pounds. So that was a problem for sure. Why they were so loose, I don't know. But let's crank it over. Okay, I do not like the way it cranks. It still looks like having a dead cylinder. And let's connect the coils to a bank one and see if you can start the engine briefly and see how the engine is going to behave. But I do not like the way it cranks. Now, we could have a cylinder wash down, but we'll see. Okay, have to review the it's not bad. It definitely sounds much better than it was. Again, I have to see the result of this test. I'm doing a power balance test on this engine, and by unplugging coils, and I just unplugged number 2, and there are no changes on the RPM. Let's go number 4. Change. Here it. Number 4 is working. Let's get number 6. It's working. Number 8. Working. I'm sure these are okay here. P05 is fine, so these are okay here. Anyhow, let's look at the gauge. I got my vacuum gauge, so you can see the vacuum is much better. It's almost around 18 inches of vacuum. We can see very, very slight fluctuation on the needle, and I've seen this before, and this is clear indication to me that we have a problem with the exhaust valve. So let's go ahead and if we have a problem on the intake valve, this needle will fluctuate more. But it is indication, it's a, I don't know if you guys can see it, but it's a very, very slight fluctuation of the needle. Now let's go ahead and look at this with the first look sensor. Alright, so I've got the first look sensor. I got my KV probe. I'm going to put it in the cylinder number 2, and let's get to our scope. So I got around 2 volts on my first look sensors and around 5 volts on my KV probe. It just depends, you know. You're gonna change that as you need it, and let's start it up. I want to do cranking first. Let's see. Okay, and let's change this. And we can see anomaly here. So basically that little fluctuation on our needle, this is what we see here. And now we can put these cursors, and now we can see this, of course, here. This is my sink, and in between we should have 8. We're gonna change this. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And now, of course, this is my cylinder number 2. Now you can actually see a lot of hash here. It's very interesting. Now, again, you know, to analyze these waveforms, I mean, I really don't know much. To me, this is all I need to know, that I have a mechanical problem on the engine, and so I'm just gonna, you know, at this point I basically have a funnel. I don't have to look for, you know, fuel or ignition or something like that. I know at this point I'm having an issue with my mechanical problem. We have a mechanical problem on the engine. Of course, we can do a relative compression test, but I do actually like first look sensor. And so now actually I did see, I was doing a lot of research, and they said if you see this hash here, that could be the indication there, the camshaft, you know, it's damaged, which could be. I cannot vouch on that, but we do have a repetition here for sure. So let's go ahead and you know, it's constantly, it's the same after that. So this could be actually, that's a camshaft is damaged. I don't know. Let's start car real quick and alright, and zoom in, and we can see, you know, the difference between scope and mechanical gauge. I mean, how well it's so pronounced on the on our waveform that, you know, that for sure, you know, we are dealing with mechanical problem, and so then we can move this and these cursors. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 again. So my ignition waveform is upside down, but I don't really care. All I want to see is just my you know, waveform, and you can see that how well the first look sensor can pick up the signal and how well the scope can actually show you what's going on. And the next one I'm going to do, again, for me to figure out, you know, what cylinder is misfiring and how, what all this means. I mean, I was fooling with it a little bit, but it's honestly, you know, once you get to this point, once you see this, you know you have a mechanical issue, you have your funnel, and you're gonna go with your diagnosis in that direction. All right, so let's get the compression waveform from the number 2. For cylinder number 2, I have, let's go to a 500 psi, and this should work. So what I do expect to see this time is that we should see elevated pressure on a on this cylinder on a exhaust stroke. It should not get the 500 psi. I should get a lot less, but that's okay. I think we can work around this. We can see the peak compression is around 82 psi, but clearly we can see that our waveform here. This is clear indication that our exhaust valve, it's not opening, it's closing way too early. It's not basically the duration is less. It's you could see that on the when we filmed it actually as I was cranking the engine over. So this is the problem. Now let's see what the vacuum should be a little bit better now, I would say, and it's around 12, like 24 inches of vacuum. And pressure here, it's pretty much at the 0. What I also worried about is are the catalytic converters. Are they plugged up? I'm not sure how long they've been driving like this, but definitely, you know, this is our problem on the exhaust valve. Guys, I want to apologize. It is not easy to do a series of videos when you're doing this kind of repairs, when you kind of doing segments every 4 or 5 days. You're kind of going back and forth. You forgot what you've done before. But anyhow, at this point, as I was once I put everything back together, we had a misfire on number 2 again, which was actually indicated by our trouble code. And then we did a power balance test. We could do we are not getting the number 2 is not contributing, and then I used a first look sensor and a vacuum gauge. We could see the vacuum gauge fluctuating again. We could see the inconsistent cranking. We still had a compression issue, and then using a first look sensor, we could see that now the waveform actually got much better. When I kind of went back again, looked at it, we pretty much had like almost like a 3.5 pulses. I was kept saying humps, they're pulses from the intake. Basically, everything was coming from the from the bank 1. And because the bank 2 was completely messed up, and so once I got the rocker arms in our waveform got much better. We could see individual pulses, and there was one big pulse basically that was coming from number 2. So what I'm trying to say is that we've got those 8 pulses back on our waveform, but we got one bigger one which lost of a vacuum in the intake due to a problem on the cylinder number 2. Now, as I said before, in my experience, if I see a pronounced needle fluctuation from my vacuum gauge, that's pretty much indication that you have a problem with a intake valve, and if that needle is kind of steady but you still have a compression issue, and you're looking at the first look sensor, definitely see there's something's going on. They most likely have a problem with the exhaust, and of course by looking at the now at the compression, running compression, we could see that that exhaust valve is still our problem now on cylinder number 2. And so I talked to a owner, and he agreed to do a complete engine teardown, which I did. And there's some interesting stuff that I found, and he wants to get this fixed as cheap as possible, so we have ordered some aftermarket parts, and I'm still waiting for that to come in. And in the meantime, I'll show you what I have found. We can see that I have removed a cylinders, that removed the camshaft. I decided to remove my disassemble the front end in order to remove a camshaft, which is of course here. You have to kind of push it out. I do have, as a matter of fact, right there is my AC recovery machine. I've got that back in the summer. It's an old one, very, very old, almost like I got it off of the guy that got it off of for the dealership. So there it is. It's an old one, but still works fine. So I recovered the Freon and disassemble, completely disassemble the front end, take the condenser and the fans and everything out, and I was able to get my camshaft, and now that's that. So let's see the parts that are removed. See, we have a cylinder head gaskets here, we have a camshaft, and we have a lifters. These lifters are from the bank 2, these are from the bank 1, and right away we can see is actually these are aftermarket here. These are not original lifters. These are aftermarket, these are original. And when we look at the head gaskets, this we can see, guys, this is a Velcro gasket, and this one is from a AutoZone or whatever. So this one is from the bank 2, and here's the original gasket from bank 1. So somebody was here before, and what they did, they basically, so this is still an old-fashioned problem with the lifters, and here's the camshaft, here's a lobe on cylinder number 2. So this is number 1 and this is number 2 here, and we can see this lobe is completely chewed up. It's really heavily damaged. That's why our the valve is not opening. And that's I also forgot to say that when I installed my rocker arms, I could see that this valve it's not opening. It's not opening all the way, and sure enough that was a problem. And so again, that's a problem with the lifter. The lifter would seize, and then you would rub, the camshaft will still keep turning until it's completely damaged. And also there's some pitting, some heavy pitting on the. Let's see if I can find it. Some pitting here, and here as well. I mean, there's a lot of, but this is a main problem here. Now, what they did actually, they had this problem originally, and they removed a cylinder head on a bank 2, and all they did is actually they changed the lifter. So when I pulled the lifters out, and these are the lifters that were on the from the number 2 and number 3. No, I'm sorry, number 2 and number 4. And I'm looking at it, and I see nothing wrong with it. I say, what the heck? I mean, they are nice, smooth lifters. But when you look this one, let me see which one it is. It's this one here. You can see it is actually, it still works fine, but you can see this fine scratches that are basically, scratches from this camshaft lobe. So what they did, they put the Band-Aid on this engine. They put new lifter on, and engine was running better, and over time it's kind of a little confusing, still confusing to me, how seems like the lobe got damaged even more, even though the lifter is fine. So I don't know. Anyhow, we gonna have a original OEM
camshaft. I found one off of eBay, and actually I went to the dealership. They're like $350, but they are on the back order till May, so next I don't know, 5-6 months. And luckily I got one off of eBay, the original. And so owner wants to replace this lifter here, and the rest of it we're gonna put it back in, and with the original push rods. And that's it for now. And we'll see once we assemble the engine together how everything's going to run. I know I'm going to be criticized and not change all of the parts. I can do only what the owner wants me to do. As I said, these are fine. I don't see any damage to these lifters at all. So something else I've done also, I had check compression on a 4, 6, and 8. They were like a 220 psi, same as the compression on the 1, 3, 5, and 7. And leak down test was a little inconclusive because I had like a 40% leakage on number 4, but when I did a compression test, it was okay. Anyhow, that's the plan. We will put all this back together, and it should run fine. Again, it was just a really kind of odd circumstances how everything kind of played out, but how long he's going to keep this car, I don't know, but I will do the best I can to put it back together. Again, the cylinder heads, and I mean we're going to have a new head, of course. Sorry, the head gaskets, new bolts, new. I ordered the gaskets for the water pump, for a chain cover. All that's going to be new, but that's going to be aftermarket. That's what he can afford, and that's what we're going to do. And I'll see you guys in part 3. Thank you.